Our trouble began with a simple dare, as most mistakes do. We were 5 friends, bored and restless, itching for one last adventure before adulthood swept us away. There was Mark, our unofficial leader, tall and confident with a knack for getting into scrapes. Sarah, his equal in wit if not in height, who always veered toward the esoteric. Jason, ever ready with a joke to mask his nerves. Amanda, fiercely intelligent and just a bit skeptical about everything. And then there was me, Nick, somewhere in between wanting to turn back and being pulled forward by the group. The tunnel system had once been part of an old mining operation, closed decades ago after a series of inexplicable accidents. Now, it was forgotten, consumed by the forest, save for a few rumors that lingered among locals like an acrid fog. Stories of echoes that didn't belong, of paths that twisted back on themselves, haunted the beer-soaked nights of campfire tales. We set out just before dusk, flashlights in hand, backpacks loaded with water and snacks, and one particularly faulty map Jason swore he'd found online. At the entrance, the tunnel appeared vast and unwelcoming, its yawning mouth carpeted by moss and shadow. We hesitated, a collective silence falling over us as the evening thickened, but Mark's fearless laugh shattered the stillness. "Don't tell me you're scared already," he teased, nudging Amanda, who rolled her eyes and stepped inside, setting the pace as though daring us to keep up with her. As we ventured into the depths, the light from the entrance shrank behind us. The air turned cold and damp, settling over my skin like an unwelcome shroud. Our flashlights carved shaky paths through the dark, bouncing off walls where generations of miners had etched their toil. Within moments, it became clear the tunnel was unlike anything we'd expected. The walls seemed to close in, only to expand into wide chambers that swallowed our light. Shallow rivulets of water trickled beneath our feet, echoing around us in a cacophony that felt all too alive. "How far does this go?" Jason asked, his voice tinged with forced cheer, but it barely masked the quiver beneath. "The map says there's a main chamber about a mile in." "We can turn back any time," Amanda replied, peering at the screen of her phone, the signal long gone and the digital map now useless. We pressed on, swapping stories to keep the mood light, but unease clung to us like dust. After what felt like hours, we reached a fork to identical paths stretching away into the dark. Mark suggested left, sure of himself, but there was an itching discomfort in my gut. I couldn't shake the feeling that we had passed this way before, though that was impossible. The further we went, the stranger it all became. Tunnels narrowed unexpectedly, then opened into vast expanses. Sometimes the air seemed to shift, carrying with it a feeling of wrongness, as if the space itself were breathing. It was Sarah, sensitive to every nuance, who first voiced what we were all thinking. "Are these tunnels changing?" Her voice was soft but echoed sharply, underscoring the unease. "That's ridiculous," Mark countered, but even his sturdy voice sounded dull. "Tunnels don't just shift." But as we continued, we found our steps faltering, our confidence eroded by the strange disorientation. Minutes stretched to an hour, then more, until Jason stopped abruptly, holding his phone aloft as though it might provide answers. "Did we take a wrong turn?" His voice held a note of desperation that crept into us all. "It's not the same," Amanda said, more to herself than to any of us, tracing the wall with her fingers. The rock felt warm, almost alive, pulsing faintly under her touch. And then we heard it soft at first, like a distant whisper. It was a sound that shouldn't exist in a place like this, a low hum, a vibration that rattled through the stones and settled into our bones. It was as if the earth were speaking an unsettling language of its own. We huddled closer, our laughter stifled, replaced by a silence woven with fear. The tunnel seemed to go on forever, each step heavy with dread. As the sound grew, so did a peculiar understanding among us. We were no longer alone in these twisting walls. Freya shivered as she peered into the gaping mouth of the tunnel. The collapse, just 2 hours ago, had sent everyone scurrying to safety. But now, the dust had settled, and it was clear several workers were still trapped inside. Her radio crackled to life. "Freya, you need to lead the search party. We've got maybe an hour before it shifts again." The shift was a phenomenon the workers had said about a wretched feature of these old tunnels. Structures twisting and warping every 60 minutes, like the place was alive and restless. Freya adjusted her headlamp and stepped into the darkness, feeling the weight of earth pressing down from all sides. 2 men, Parker and Lewis, followed her, their faces set and grim. Behind them, the lights of the makeshift camp outside faded, swallowed by the tunnel's gloom. The first turn was subtle, a gradual curve that wasn't marked on the original maps, but felt right. Then the air grew heavier, laced with a metallic tang that stung the lungs. Freya paused, letting the labyrinth's pulse guide them deeper. "Fresh air," Parker noted, glancing up at the ductwork as they moved. The air current was slight, yet persistent, suggesting some breach in the rock above. They reached a junction where 3 paths veered off like the branches of a grim tree. Freya checked her watch. 15 minutes left until the shift. She chose the left path, the one with a faint echo of voices, though none of them spoke. The tunnel narrowed, forcing them to stoop. The deeper they went, the more the walls seemed to close in, covered in a slick film of condensation. Shadows played tricks, hints of movement at the edge of vision. A distant rumble vibrated through the rock, a reminder of both their fragile mortality and the merciless mechanics of the shifting maze. Lewis scraped his arm against the rough wall, muttering a curse as he did. The cut oozed, mingling with the muck on his skin. The voices grew louder, distinct in their panic. Freya heartened, urged them on with a nod. But then the ground trembled, setting pebbles dancing in unpredictable patterns. The tunnel ahead flickered under their lights, and with it came a foul, odor-rotting flesh, earthy and ancient. Freya's insides clenched. The shift was starting early. They dashed forward, adrenaline dulling the edges of their fear. The voices were nearer now, right around the next bend. Freya stumbled into a wide chamber, the ceiling arching high and formidable. Here lay the missing workers, their eyes wide with terror. They were trapped within a cage of stone, one that had surely not been here an hour ago. Relief and terror mixed in their gaze as Freya, Parker, and Lewis arrived. But the relief was short-lived. The stone shivered, twitching under some unseen force. The rules, it seemed, were mutable here. Freya spun around, counting heads, trying to gather her wits as the walls groaned and shifted. Parker was already at the makeshift prison, yanking at bars of stone that felt warm and alive. "We have to get them out before it all changes again," he urged. The ceiling dripped in a slow, viscous ooze, the smell intensifying as though the tunnel itself resisted their intrusion. Freya took a steadying breath, her mind racing for solutions. She spotted an old cable reel, its metal sturdy and unrusted, and began using it as leverage. The workers joined in, straining with the desperate energy of trapped animals. Stone grated against stone, and with a concerted push, the cage yielded, breaking apart at last. "Move, move," Freya ordered, urgency sharpening her voice. They clambered back the way they'd come, the screeching grind of the closing tunnel a constant threat at their heels. The air shifted again, the tunnel compressing and narrowing. Their frantic pace took them past areas they didn't recognize, yet they couldn't stop. The exit seemed impossibly distant, time slipping through their fingers. Minutes dripped away, and with each step, the tunnel closed in behind them like a predator poised to strike. They burst into the open air, lungs filling with the sweet chill of the outside world. They tumbled out, sprawled on the ground, each grateful for the solid earth beneath their feet. Freya looked back at the tunnel's mouth, now a sinister silhouette against the twilight. It felt like a living thing, wounded but not beaten, waiting for its next victims. The group lay there, panting and spent, knowing they had escaped by the thinnest margin. The tunnel would bide its time and shift again when the stars aligned or whim dictated. But for now, they had conquered its madness. They shared a look, a silent vow to seal it forever, to let it remain a buried secret. The earth held many mysteries, and they had survived one that defied explanation. It was time to let this one lie in darkness, undisturbed. Evan cradled his flashlight, staring into the darkness where the tunnel yawned. The rocks around him were jagged and cold, remnants of a collapse that had lured him deeper into this labyrinth of shifting passages. The walls said faint, unsettling promises in their gritty language as the minutes ticked by. Each tick brought the inevitable shift of the tunnels, their labyrinthine paths reconfiguring every hour. Evan could never return the same way he came. The air was stale, carrying a sense of abandon and the scent of damp earth. He thought it an adventure at first when he'd followed the rumors of the tunnel that never stayed the same. Cartographers and thrill-seekers had made maps, only to scrap them when the terrain defied their logic. Now, lost and alone, Evan felt the oppressive weight of his own naivety pressing down on him. He moved forward, guided by instincts he hoped wouldn't betray him. The flashlight beam danced over twisted branches of rock and eroded stalagmites that loomed like sentinels. Suddenly, a noise echoed a soft, distant weeping, growing clearer as he pressed onward. Evan's heart pounded against his ribs, his breath ragged in the enclose. The sound led him to a woman, or what seemed like one, her form half shrouded in shadow. Her skin was pallid, almost translucent, and her eyes glowed ethereal blue, like twin beacons slicing through the gloom. "You shouldn't be here," she said, her voice soft but carrying a weight of ages. "I got trapped," Evan replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "The tunnels." "Yes, the tunnels. They hunger for those who wander too far, who linger too long." Her gaze was steady, unblinking. Evan swallowed hard. "Why? What do they want?" "Purpose," she said simply, the word echoing in the stillness. "Every shift, every collapse it seeks. Something was lost here long ago. It's trying to fill the void." He knew then that leaving was beyond simple escape. There was something the tunnels needed him to discover, to understand. "Help me," he pleaded. "I don't want to be lost here." She nodded, gesturing down yet another passage, lit only by his trembling flashlight. He followed, the path twisting in unexpected directions, the air growing colder, sharper with each step. At the heart of the maze, they came upon an enormous cavern that seemed untouched by time. In the cavern's center lay a massive stone altar, inscriptions worn by eons of shifting earth. Around it, shadows danced, forming shapes that flickers of light couldn't fully reveal. The woman stepped closer, her fingers tracing the ancient symbols with reverence. "This place," she said, was where an ancient people made their final plea. In their hubris, they asked for power to reshape the world. The tunnels are their answer. Reshape? Evan asked, realizing the futility etched in stone, the ambition that led to perpetual motion, endless rearrangement. Their reach exceeded their grasp. The tunnels shift, seeking harmony, balance. It searches for someone who can understand, to guide them back to rest. Evan absorbed the weight of her words. He felt the pull, the sense of the earth around him begging for release from chaos, from its own ambition. Was that the true purpose? For someone to end the ceaseless rearrangement? "What can I do?" he asked, willing to try, to be more than careless curiosity. "You must choose," she said. "Sacrifice belonging to the world above, or make peace with the world below." His mind swirled with thoughts of life above ground, friends, family, sunlight, things that felt distant, yet tethering. But here, in this strange, reality-bending place, he'd never felt more a part of something vast and arcane. He stepped toward the altar, feeling the world shift, waiting for his decision. Could he bind himself to this place, to end its restless searching? Closing his eyes, he laid his palm upon the stone. A warmth pulsed beneath his skin, a rhythm entwined with beating hearts and tumbling time. And then a stillness. The tremors halted. The sounds quieted, as if the tunnels at last took a breath. When Evan opened his eyes, the woman had gone, but her presence lingered in the tranquil air. The light, once dim, now softly illuminated a singular path leading out. He walked, feeling the way, knowing instinctively the exit awaited. The sun was setting when he emerged, the horizon painted in hues of orange and purple. The world seemed more vibrant, more alive. Behind him, the entrance sealed itself, a secret kept until it was needed again. He stood there contemplating the surreal experience, pondering if the tunnels were truly at peace, or simply resting, waiting for the next seeker daring enough to wander too deep.